everybody. My name is Kyle Insel. I'll be presenting today with Timothy Connolly, representing Shell Offshore. Just wanted to go ahead and thank the executive committee for the nomination and the opportunity to speak today to you all. We're very excited about what we've put together here. We've had collaborative efforts, not only with different regulatory agencies, but also industry partners alike. This is a Shell nomination that we submitted, but make no mistake that we certainly have been working this with a multitude of different platforms. So I'll go ahead and get started, and then when it's Tim's opportunity to speak, I'll let him introduce himself. I'm a regulatory compliance specialist as well as a process safety engineer for Shell. I've recently been put into a new position, and so I've been a part of this holistic approach to managing lifeboat safety since the beginning of its inception, which is following an immeasurable tragedy that we suffered on June 30th, 2019, when the incident on Auger occurred. If you can go to the next slide, please. I had the opportunity to share this timeline with the COS Executive Committee following the incident that occurred. The intent of this meeting is certainly not to discuss the Auger incident, more so where we're going as a company as we're reshaping our lifeboat safety. So I've got this timeline. I'm working from an iPad, so I apologize. I'm going to be shifting a little bit so that I can see on my my computer screen. As you can see, June 30th is when the incident occurred. That caused us as Shell as a company pause. We had two fronts going at that point. We had an investigation, a federal investigation ongoing still with the U.S. Coast Guard. We also collaborated with Bessie, who was there immediately following the incident. Both regulatory agencies have been great to work with. We've kept them abreast of everything that we've been doing from the point of June 30th to where we are now. So the second bullet, when I said that it caused us pause, as a company, we were running the investigation at the same time. We wanted to see if we could incorporate change, to see if we could remove risk from our individuals offshore from completing these lifeboat activities where we're invoking risk to personnel safety. So as a member of the OOC Lifeboat Subcommittee, myself along with Chevron, Chris Woodle, we put together, we met, we discussed what the future of lifeboats in the Gulf of Mexico look like. We use this as an opportunity to collaborate with the other industry partners. We held a meeting at Robert Training Center where we brought in OEMs, we brought in all industry partners were welcome. We wanted to sit down, we wanted to get to the root cause, we wanted to see what each other were doing, how we could improve the safety of personnel with performing these lifeboat tests from a regulatory perspective. We wanted to challenge the regulatory landscape to see if there is in fact a way that we could improve this. And so we ultimately arrived at that following that meeting where we collaboratively discussed what we should do in the future. Like I said, very collaborative efforts with everyone. We spearheaded these discussions and going into the next phase where the subcommittee put together a drafted document around OOC guidance document on alternatives to lifeboat launching. That document has subsequently been published by the Offshore Operators Committee. It took quite a while to get it to that point. Like I said, we had a multitude of industry partners that provided great input that put us in that position to submit it to the OOC Executive Committee where we are today, where it's published, right? Fast forward the track, we had these discussions with the Coast Guard. At that point, Shell as a company, in parallel effort with this OOC guidance document, we're running in tandem as far as what our future lifeboat management system will look like. And Tim's going to talk about that a little bit later. I'm more focused on providing the regulatory landscape from where we are, or where we've come, from where we're going, or where we'd like to go. So we met with the Coast Guard, OCS, OCMI. We've been working with them very closely from the day the incident occurred to now. We've kept them abreast of what our plan for changes, how we can make this a safer operation for all parties. And so as an industry trade organization through the OOC, we thought to ourselves, maybe there's other operators, maybe there's other theaters that are already incorporating some of the backbones to what we're looking to do. We reached out to some industry partners in Canada, and we met with the regulatory agencies up there. We actually took a field trip, so to speak. Shell, Chevron, Exxon, BHP, and Murphy was supposed to attend, but there were certainly limitations at that point with COVID-19. So it was a great collaboration with them. It was over the course of 3 days. We got a very deep dive in how they manage lifeboat safety. And we took a lot of lessons back from that, and we incorporated them into our guidance document that is subsequently published. And I'll let Tim speak more to the points of what that landscape looks like. Our investigation team, I put this in here. We had an investigation team. Like I said, we had parallel efforts when this was ongoing. And one of the things that we did is we reached out to everybody, and we wanted to share the findings from our investigation. So we invited everybody in to what was One Shell Square to do a learning session where our investigation team broke down in a very detailed discussion what happened from the incident. And so what we've done now is we've incorporated all these learnings from that incident, and that's built into the framework of this guidance document on how we can prevent this from occurring again. Fast forward to August, and in between that timeline, between March and August, there was certainly some collaborative efforts with the Coast Guard. You can go to the next slide, please. And what I'll do is I'll speak to where we are at a later time. I'll speak a little bit. I know we're going to talk about this in a later session through the OOC, but I wanted to give you the core principles of the guidance document that was developed through the OOC. And as you can see, it's the guidelines on alternative methods for lifeboat drills on MODUs. That was the backbone, core principles of what we framed everything off of. That's what it's synonymous with what Canada was using. And you can look at the two core pillars of that. Number one is the maintenance of lifeboat equipment, and number two is the competency of personnel. We feel very strongly that the enhancements that we've made that Tim will talk about strengthens our case in both of these areas. This framework is great for other operators to reach out to the Coast Guard and provide a guidance or a alternative submission on lifeboat launching. Let's see. So when we talk about the submittal, we submitted back in August of this year to the Coast Guard. There's been a lot of discussion. We've met. They've actually got a team put together that we've been speaking with. They've come to our Robert Training Center, which is how we plan to operationalize components of our competency of personnel as well as maintenance components. And I'll let Tim get into that. But where we are right now is we're shooting for a Q4 response from the Coast Guard. We've provided detailed explanations, and we've come back with review questions and further clarifications to their office on how we are operationalizing these components to this guidance document. And I think that is what is ultimately going to help us through these detailed discussions with the Coast Guard arrive in a space where we can prevent safety to the personnel offshore. So given that background, I'll go ahead and hand that over to Tim, and I appreciate everybody's time. to discuss the first part of this presentation.
Thanks, Kyle. I'm assuming everyone can hear me and see me. It's a good job of recapping kind of where we were post-incident and how we're proceeding. I'm going to get into a few things around kind of the design approach that we leveraged to create this new management system associated with the lifeboat. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the key features, and then we'll kind of probably wrap up there. You know, the journey we've been on is actually telling the story associated with the journey, in my view, is just as important as the final destination. And I feel like the audience really needs to hear a little bit about that journey, the journey that we've been on. So, you know, I'm honored to be nominated as a finalist. The COS nomination is a really big deal. But for me and for Kyle and the folks within Shell, you know, we're more excited about the potential for rapid replication of this design within our industry so that we can march towards a future where we do not injure anyone in a lifeboat again. So, stepping back, we had the unfortunate incident at Auger. Most people have heard about that. You know, we lost two of our friends, our family members within the Shell community. The leaders within the Gulf of Mexico at Shell and beyond, at the higher organizational levels within Shell, they made a commitment to never allow this to happen again. And at that point, they started to nominate certain individuals to basically be a part of a design team to create a new future state, a future state management system that really was focused on achieving two objectives. The number one objective is goal 0 associated with lifeboat operations. The number 2 objective, which is equal to that objective, is to ensure that the lifeboats are always at the ready to launch. That is the reason why we have lifeboats. They are a right side mitigation to reduce the severity of an event that requires an evacuation of your facility. And we need to ensure that those devices perform that function with excellence, and that is a replicatable sort of activity, something that we can rely upon. The Coast Guard expects that. The various regulatory bodies that we deal with, SOLAS and others, they expect that, IMO. We need to ensure that that takes place. So the team kind of rallied together around what happened at Auger and rallied around this future state, rallied around the goal associated with always ensuring that the boats are ready to launch and that we never have another Auger-like incident again. So after we were able to frame those objectives and kind of wrap our brains around that, we took a step back as a team. And the team said, you know, hey, look, what happened here? What happened with Auger? And, you know, we've heard a little bit about the deep dive causal investigation and some of those things already. But as the team was kind of forming in the beginning, we didn't really know kind of really what the root cause was, or the causal factors associated with the incident. So we started to brainstorm at that time. You know, several members of the team and within Shell, we're all pretty well schooled on HEMP methodology, hazards and effects management process, ALARP thinking, bow tie methodology. We've heard those things throughout the presentation today. You know, within Shell, it's kind of our way of doing business in terms of de-risking activities. So, you know, we thought a little bit about what happened. We thought about the lifeboat system. We started to scour our HSE case documents within the group. And we realized that that lifeboats always were showing up on the right side of the various bow ties within our business. It's showing up as a right side mitigation, a mitigation to a top event, such as loss of hydrocarbons or something like that, something that we use to try to reduce the severity of the top event. And we said, hey, look, what happened here? Actually, the lifeboat system showed up on the left side of the bow tie model. It was a threat that led to multiple fatalities. The threat of falling from heights, nearly 90 feet, led to fatalities. That was a big aha moment for us within the Gulf of Mexico, within Shell. So we took a step back in the beginning as a design team and we said, hey, look, if the lifeboat shows up as a left side threat, what could be some of the conceptual preventative barriers, of those left side barriers that would prevent that threat from turning into a fatality or an injury event? So that's kind of what this image is trying to represent. We thought that there's probably something around integrity of the system, maintenance, inspection, those sorts of things. That probably shows up bundled into some sort of barrier conceptually at a high level. We didn't really understand kind of what the details associated with that barrier would look like at the time, but we worked to iron those out. And I'll talk a little bit about that. There's also probably a barrier that shows up on the left side of the bow tie model associated with competency. You know, think about it. If you have individuals that are competent to operate the boat, competent to maintain the boat, competent to act as a passenger within the boat, you could potentially prevent the threat of falling from heights from turning into a multiple fatality event. And then the third one, which was a real aha for us, a big aha, was around this concept around the policy and how could we de-risk the policy or ALARP the policy. So if you think about it, it's kind of hard to stretch your brain to think about this way, but the policy that is in place that's governing the way we use these lifeboats in our business unit, if it's structured properly, it de-risks the activity, and it could potentially show up as a preventative barrier in a way to prevent someone from falling from heights, right? So kind of top level, high level barriers. We probably realized that there was maybe a couple more, but we wanted to focus on those. So as a team, this cross-discipline team, we started to just hammer away at further defining the future state requirements associated with each of these barriers at a very granular level. And you know, we started really with maintenance inspection. That's an obvious one. Not to say that we're not maintaining properly or at an adequate level, but there's always opportunity to enhance the maintenance associated with the lifeboat system. As with any system, you can do a better job of maintaining. You can also install additional barriers or assurance barriers to understand kind of how healthy that maintenance system is. So obviously we went into the maintenance system. We collaborated with the OEMs to get a little bit more granular with the maintenance requirements, from a weekly, a monthly, a quarterly, 6-month, annual, 5-year, and beyond, truly defining what those required tasks are and understanding it at a high level of detail within a procedural sort of view how to execute those tasks to ensure that, you know, we honor that maintenance strategy that the OEMs work so hard to put together, and kind of get that all tightened up. We also realized within the maintenance space that there was probably an opportunity to do some things differently in the performance testing realm. So you think about it, you have lifeboats, they need to operate on demand. Well, there's certain subcomponents and subsystems that need to perform at a high level in a reliable way, such as the engine and the propeller and the release gear mechanism, the deluge system. We needed to ensure that those systems were always ready to operate on demand. And we started to think, you know, we were probably using this quarterly or annual launch to satisfy those performance requirements. But, you know, there was probably another way to do some of those things. And I'll kind of reference the comment Kyle made around the Newfoundland, Canada trip. We realized that there are other ways to performance test these critical subsystems and other ways where you can pull the human out of the equation. More about that in a few minutes. And then we started to focus a little bit on competency. Okay, so not to say that any of the individuals in our business unit are incompetent, but there's always an opportunity to enhance competency. And competency is one of those things where you get a multiplier effect, right? If you're at a higher level of competency as a mechanic or electrician or CAO, then maybe you can catch something during your weekly or monthly surveillance round, or maybe when the third party is coming to your facility and they're executing things per annual required maintenance task list, you know the sort of questions to ask to challenge that individual on the robustness of that maintenance plan or the execution aspects associated with that maintenance. So we realized, and it's odd that this came first, but we realized first that maintenance competency associated with the maintainer of the lifeboat ranked very high. We realize that the men and women in our business unit that are maintaining the boats, we rely upon them to provide a critical role, and we needed to train them to be able to meet their potential and our expectations on how to execute maintenance at the level that we require to achieve these objectives around being ready to launch and achieving Goal Zero safety performance. So we created a maintenance, we call it a maintenance assurance training program. We have this program up and running at the Robert Training Center. Any of our friends within the industry are welcome to come. We train our maintainers on the inner workings of the system, the subsystems, how to perform weekly properly, what to look for during an annual. That's a very hands-on sort of training in the shop, and it's very configuration specific. We have multiple models of boats and multiple models of release gear, et cetera. And those folks were able to kind of up their game in terms of competency around maintainer training or maintenance, essentially. Number two, around competency, we realized that the coxswains, and I can never pronounce that word properly, but we were relying on a quarterly or an annual manned launch, people launch, to ensure competency of the operator. I'll call it the operator of the lifeboat. Well, there's probably another way to enhance the competency associated with the operator of the lifeboat. What we learned in Canada is that, obviously offshore Atlantic Ocean, the sea states are pretty radical, and you need to kind of jump back to the previous slide if you don't mind. You need to be able to kind of launch the boats in safe harbor, right? They're kind of in a bit of there's a constraint on their whole system up there. So we realized that, hey, look, could we potentially test these boats or conduct launching in safe harbor, plus also leverage some of this new technology that is at our fingertips now around simulations, virtual reality, to kind of not only kind of ensure that the operators have a baseline level of training, but an enhanced level of training so that they can execute their task on demand in the case of an emergency, and also in the case of a potential reduced frequency of manned launches or a scenario where we're not actually conducting a manned launch. So high level competency, we dived in and we created some new training programs around that. We have we call it a PSC renewal training program that is up and running at Robert Training Center, which is kind of a replacement in our view for a manned launch. These training programs are running and they're available for anyone within the community. And then finally, we get to, not finally, but next we get to policy ALAR. And we've talked about this a little bit in the beginning, but how could we potentially modify the policy or work with the regulatory bodies to de-risk that policy? And that really gets into figuring out a way to performance test the boats without exposing humans to the act of a launch, and figuring out a way to ensure that the operators of the boat are competent without exposing them to the act of a manned launch. Credit to the Coast Guard, we've had a very open relationship. Kyle mentioned a collaborative sort of relationship with them, and it's been a journey that we've been on for many months now, and I feel like they have a better understanding of what we're thinking in terms of how we could de-risk that activity, and then how we can proceed further in the future around a potential alternative scheme. And then, so this is a circular diagram. It's like that on purpose. It shows it going back to hemp for lifeboats. And let me explain that. And in the beginning, we talked about doing a high-level conceptual bow tie study around what would the lifeboat system look like on the left side of the bow tie. We did that at a high-level conceptual. We dove into some of these details and we created this future state. Well, I guess as of 6 months ago, we took those details to a global team within all of Shell that represents all of Shell's lifeboat fleet. And we've taken those and we've created a very granular formal bow tie for all lifeboat systems and all configurations in our business within Shell. And that is essentially detailing out at a high level of detail what these barriers are, what they look like, the required assurance tests associated with them. And then we're taking these barriers, operational, maintenance, competency, and we're using the operational and maintenance ones to inform a failure modes and effects analysis, which is creating a formal maintenance strategy for all of Shell that will be used to influence every business unit within our group, every business unit that has lifeboats within their fleet. And we'll use that to ensure that the seeds that were planted in the Gulf of Mexico become part of, we talk about management systems a lot today, but part of Shell's management system globally. And these are things that we're willing to share and help our partners in the Gulf of Mexico with. That's why we go back and it loops again, because this is an iterative process. It's circular. It never ends. The loop of continuous improvement never ends. We'll find things within our system that are not perfect. We will address those things. We'll make the necessary adjustments and we'll tweak them. But we feel like now we have additional barriers on the left side of the bow tie model to prevent that top event from turning into multiple fatalities, or that threat of falling from heights, turning into multiple fatality event. So next slide, kind of just summarizing some of the key features associated with the project. We talked a little bit about hemp for lifeboats. It's understanding what the system looks like from a boat type perspective, and then the global framework and the way in which we replicate that within Shell from a control framework perspective. Talked a little bit about the design, maintenance, and testing enhancements and how we've kind of raised our game in terms of maintenance, maintenance strategy, inspection protocols, pass-fail criteria, alternative testing schemes, leveraging things like in-depth wet testing. The policy piece, talked a little bit about that, leveraging industry partnerships. You know, Kyle did a great job of talking about the partnership within that space. And then the competency piece. This program is up and running and it's ready for use. I don't want to sound like a salesperson for Shell, but it's around leveraging these new training programs to enhance the competency of all individuals working in and around the lifeboat within the Gulf of Mexico and beyond, and it's available for utilization. So in summary, really appreciate the opportunity to be here to kind of share this story. Totally honored to be named a finalist for this COS award. It really means a lot to me, to Kyle, to Shell, and all the men and women that have worked tirelessly on this project, many of whom are on the call at Shell and within our partner and safety community to get this thing where it is today. A fantastic job. This presentation is really just a testament to their hard work and dedication to prevent this from ever occurring again. And we look forward to marching toward rapid replication, and we're here to help and other companies partner with others to figure out ways to install these features. So thank you very much for your time, and back to you, Brandy.